arrested, Sinclair was fresh in his murderer's mind and was the subject of a vivid memoir written in prison by Nilsen about how he had met and disposed of his last victim. On the night of the 26th of January 1983, Nilsen took Sinclair home. He plied him with drinks and drugs, and soon Sinclair had passed out in an armchair. Nilsen wrote, "This was something I had to do. I thought of all that potential, all that beauty, and all that pain that is his life. It will soon be over." Nilsen had only one tie left, which he lengthened with a piece of string, put it round Sinclair's neck, and pulled. "I spoke to him, Stephen," I said. "That didn't hurt at all. Nothing can touch you now." 2 weeks later, the police found some of Sinclair's dismembered body wrapped up in newspaper in a tea chest. When his neighbors downstairs heard that Nilsen had been arrested, they couldn't believe he had done anything wrong. Des, as he now called himself, was a wonderful man, said Vivian McStay and Monique van Rutter. He was a knight in shining armor. It took 8 months for the police and the Crown prosecutors to build their case. In the meantime, there were appearances in court for remand and applications to choose lawyers. Nilsen chopped and changed between using a solicitor and defending himself. He was examined by psychiatrists for both prosecution and defense. Observers noticed how he appeared to have shrunk from the robust, tall figure he had seemed when first charged to a thin, almost wizened physique. But he seemed in good spirits, here giving photographers a V-sign through the police van window. Meanwhile, forensic experts continued to examine every square inch of the two houses. The drains and gardens where Nilsen had disposed of the dissected bodies yielded more clues to the identity of the victims, more than half of whom were still not identified. At Hornsey Police Station, a special unit was established to trace as many of the victims as possible. But despite the cooperation of Scotland Yard's Missing Persons Bureau and their fingerprint records, only 7 of the victims were identified by the time of the trial, out of the record total of 15 that Nilsen was suspected of killing at his 2 addresses. The Medical College of London Hospital joined in the task of identifying the remains that had survived Nilsen's attempts to destroy the evidence. They pieced together a jigsaw of teeth, bones and fragments, scoring a notable success in putting a name to one victim from his dental records alone. This was Graham Allen, whose identification came too late to be included on the charge sheet at Nilsen's trial. As the trial approached, the charges were restricted to 6 counts of murder and 2 of attempted murder. Ralph Saeems, Nilsen's final choice of solicitor, advised him not to plead guilty but to go for a verdict of not guilty due to diminished responsibility. So the task of prosecuting counsel Alan Green now became to prove to the jury that Nilsen knew what he was doing was wrong at the time that he did it. Nilsen's trial finally began on the 10th of October 1983 in Court Number 1 at the Old Bailey. There was no conflict over whether or not he had committed the horrific murders. The only difference of opinion was whether he was sufficiently abnormal at the time as to substantially reduce the acts to manslaughter. That is what his defense team attempted to argue. The main point at issue was what the word substantially meant legally. Prosecutor Alan Green detailed all 15 killings, including those he wasn't charged with, to show how calculating Nilsen had been. The first witnesses to face Nilsen were 3 men who had got away from him. Douglas Stewart said that he found his legs bound to the chair he had fallen asleep in. He fought loose and fled. Paul Nobbs, a student, had made an approach to Nilsen in a Soho pub. At Nilsen's flat, he had drunk so much that when he woke up in the morning, all he could feel was a hangover. During the day, he went to University College Hospital, where a doctor found his eyes popping out and deduced he had been the victim of strangulation. Karl Stottor was a female impersonator. He later gave a graphic description of his ordeal.
I fell asleep and I woke up and he was strangling me, and I passed out after sort of thinking. I thought that I'd got caught up in the sleeping bag which he'd warned me about, and I thought he was helping me out, but he wasn't. And anyway, I passed out from that, and I remember vaguely hearing water running and being carried, and I felt very cold, and I realised I was in the bath and he was trying to drown me.
He escaped when Nilsen changed his mind, and Stottor woke up thinking it was all a bad dream. When the turn of the defence came, it relied on the evidence of 2 psychiatrists to show that Nilsen was not responsible for his actions. Dr. James McKeith testified that he had a severe personality disorder. Dr. Patrick Galway testified that Nilsen was schizoid, paranoid, and irrational. This seemed to fit in closely with the testimony of the prosecution psychiatrist, Dr. Paul Bowden, that Nilsen had told him that the killings gave him a sense of power. There were no more witnesses, and after the prosecution and defense counsel had made their final pleas, the jury listened to the judge's summing up. He talked of evil. There are evil people who do evil things, he said. A mind can be evil without being abnormal. Mr. Justice Croom Johnson added, there must be no excuses for moral defects. But 2 jury members were unable to come to a decision as to the degree of Nilsen's responsibility. The judge had to accept a majority verdict of guilty. On the 4th of November 1983, Dennis Nilsen was sentenced to life imprisonment. The judge recommended that he should serve at least 25 years. Nobody knows how many people Dennis Nilsen did kill. By his own confession, he is Britain's worst serial killer. Only 7 of his victims have ever been identified. The anonymity of the remainder is a chilling reminder of how easy it is in modern society for drifters and runaways to become lost in a big city and for their murder to go unnoticed.